I'm going to tell you the name of this, what the theme is as well. It's called Excavating Orwellian Memory Holes. And what Alan is specialized in, and this, there's an irony here. I want you to hear me out. He goes back and finds things that people are actively trying to forget about, not just out of neglect, but they probably have a political agenda or whatever to just erase this inconvenient piece of history. And it often is in regards to war and war memorials and mass graves or whatever. I'm not pointing fingers at this point. Alan's had personal experience that he will share with you. But the theme I think we can all relate to, which is that of trying to purge history, censor, forget, make go away, inconvenience things that have happened in the past. It doesn't have to be war stuff. So that's kind of where he's coming from. And the irony I mentioned is that the technology he uses the most to try to keep these memories alive and to explore these memory holes is itself in deep danger of becoming a totally lost and forgotten technology. And I'm talking about the flash that's always trying to remove itself from your computer. If you're still fighting to keep yours, they nag you every month or so. Beyond Flash, the PDF format, Adobe's the one trying to yank Flash back off the market, and they have trouble doing it. It's a long, ongoing inconvenience. It's kind of a glitch in the. What was your word for it, Alan? It wasn't Matrix.
I
A
don't know.
glitch. The fact that we all now have to put up for this with this weirdness of a company that once supported software and we all came to depend
Kirby,
on.
one of the things that I learned in doing introductions is not to give all the key points of the person's talk before their talk.
Well, I agree with you, Terry, there. I certainly agree with you. I haven't touched on really all of the deep things that Alan's going to talk about,
Okay.
but I do want you to see that the overarching theme is how he's exploited the PDF Adobe format to keep memory holes alive. But then those actual memory holes, I will turn it over to Alan here now. Oh, let me just say quickly, welcome to, hey, Don Wardell just joined us. Terry here in the middle of my screen at the moment is the president of the Institute for Science, Engineering, and Public Policy. I'm currently using the host Zoom channel of that institution, and we are doing a public service by memorializing this memory hole talk of Alan's. And the goal is to have it be on YouTube and kind of be a public service of ISEP. And so with that, I am now going to, first of all, go to participants. I told you earlier, I'm gonna mute everybody just so that we don't have background noise and you have to worry about it. But then at a certain point, where's my participants window? It stopped popping up. At certain points, there it is. I will turn the mics all back on again. So it's not like your participation is unwelcome. It is more just, I want you to feel free to shuffle around in your chair, get comfortable, and not worry. Okay, some of you are already muted, and I would have to ask to unmute you. So there's that feature as well. Zoom is quite elaborate and cool. Okay, Alan, it's over to you. If you would like to, first of all, I'll introduce Alan briefly as he sets up to share his screen however he likes. He's bouncing around the West Coast, visiting old friends, old family, and he's rented a car. He's done Route 1. He's went across the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge and got stuck in San Francisco. The way you can't just drive that bridge in a non-trip. You have to be committed to going into San Francisco at that point. And he did that, and lots of jumping around on Spirit Airways, Las Vegas, so forth. So he's been in a kind of a high stress, bounce around, see old friends mode. And I'm kind of in that same category because the Erner family, and I'm just going to turn off my video because I'm trying to record. This may not work. This bull's head, because that's the Erner family mascot. It's not really a mascot, more like coat of arms. And it's from the Swiss canton of Uri, U-R-I. Okay, I'm going to come back online. And it's kind of represents our family traveling around the world and trying to do whatever we could do, and very independently, the way the Swiss are. So dad's clients were such as Libya, Bangladesh, that was the United Nations. Egypt, he worked directly for the Ministry of Planning. He was on their payroll. all kinds of, and in Bhutan, he actually worked for a Swiss agency called Helvetas. Anyway, Dad and Alan here both had the same professor, Dick Meyer, Dr. Dick Meyer, back in the University of Chicago days. Although I think Alan, you had him at
Northern Illinois University.
You had him at Northern Illinois. And what did you study with?
Actually, not Northern Illinois. That's where I'm affiliated now.
UC Berkeley, right?
At UC Berkeley, yeah.
What did he teach in your experience?
He was a kind of one of the major figures in the environmental planning program, which was over at Worcester Hall. And he was extremely helpful and generous to me, but almost impossible to have a conversation with, because the both of us were such raging solipsistic egomaniacs. We couldn't bear to let the other one have anything to say.
Yeah, he came and visited us in the Philippines with his wife, he was a huge guy, literally.
Yeah,
and
nobody should be laughing at that. That's serious.
What? How big he was?
No, what a solipsistic. Both of us were. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, but I'm over that now.
I'm just saying, I know what it's like to talk to him because I've had my own personal interactions with the guy. So you want to dive to your home screen here?
Yeah, I do. Let me. I don't know that I have to for a moment, but I just wanted to tell you, Orwellian. If you Google up Orwellian, you'll see 10 things on the web today in which the word Orwellian appears today.
Totally. It's very trendy right now.
Right. Orwell, of course, was known to be a man of the left. He was an anti-Stalinist left activist during the Spanish Civil War. Now he's a total beloved icon of the right, which is interesting also.
Just letting people know, somewhere buried in one of these PDFs we're going to see is an actual clip of Orwell being interviewed. He's lived long enough to be interviewed by the BBC, and there's an interview of him in Alan's Orwellian memory hole, what we call excavations. In other words, he's not content to just let all this stuff disappear down the hole. He's actively working to retrieve it here and there. So that's your segue. Okay, here it comes.
Okay, this is about the last 20 seconds of a 2-minute interview.
Picture of the future. Imagine a boot.
That's
stamping
Orwell
on a human face forever. Is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
Whoa.
Yeah, right. Whoa.
Whoa.
So Orwell is very...
Pay no attention to what I'm doing. I'm just saying, whoa.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get back to the
That's
right
what I
button.
call my spooky ball.
Okay, I'm still learning how to do this.
After all these years.
After all these. No, I mean...
No, you're talking about Zoom. Yeah, you got to share a window.
Okay, here is the homepage for my ebook.
There's a little bit of a delay.
Of my webpage. There's about, I would guess, no less than 3 or 4 terabytes of content, interactive content, most of it in interactive PDF, which nobody ever adopted, which is insane. It was incredibly powerful. And each of these things in the scroll down is essentially, every picture tells a story. It's essentially a enormously complicated, the home pages are in HTML, which my web designer put together for me, but all of the content, almost all of the content is an interactive PDF. And there's 2 particular things I'm going to be focusing on. This is the presentation. What Kirby neglected to mention, let me see if I can, was that I was in Los Angeles to deliver a presentation at pretty much a right-wing thing. Little Saigon down in Orange County is 135,000 deranged Vietnamese exiles and veterans and their descendants, furious at communism, furious about...
We understand that you mean that as a term of affection. Since this is going out on YouTube, we don't want you to be misunderstood, that you are very admiring of these folks. They are your buddies in a way.
They are my homies. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is an enormously complicated ebook that I extracted about 4% from and was forced to put this into a PowerPoint file, which I'll show you a few moments of, because they insisted that my presentation be mounted on the official PC, which I don't use, and it had to be in PowerPoint, which I've never used. But the original was, so each of these things opens up a vast amount of content. This was the Americal magazine. Americal was not a typographical error. It was the divisional magazine of my old division, the Americal division, which besmirched its copybook a couple of weeks before I got to Vietnam by the My Lai massacre, which none of us had ever heard of until long after the fact. This is what a typical fire base camp that we would sometimes come in from the field to pull perimeter guard look like.
So I should jump in here just biographically, timeline wise. You grew up in Brooklyn. You were not from an upper middle class family. Your dad was a butcher. Because he was Jewish, he was largely barred from the academic career he had hoped and trained for. And you got into Bard College, and you were doing pretty well there, I think. And you decided on your own to join the war effort. You were not drafted against your will. Am I right?
Totally wrong. I was not particularly serious about Bard. I didn't do very much work. And at some point, the chamber music class that I was performing in got to be too much of a hassle. And bam, my student deferment was removed. So being a smart guy, I thought I'd enlist to play the clarinet in the 6th Army Band in groovy as hell San Francisco, for which they gave me a contract to do that. But things in San Francisco took a turn from the worst, because the Grateful Dead played for free every Saturday in Golden Gate Park. And there was this hippie chick who I used to get stoned with and go there, who was the colonel's daughter. And at the Presidio, I was based at the Presidio. And I once made the mistake of calling her up at his parents' house. And at that point, the colonel decided, let's get this guy out of here, and sent me out to Vietnam and changed my job from first musician and then journalist to light weapons infantryman. The I Ching said, the earth in its devotion bears both good and evil. So I said, looks like I have to actually do it. Okay, well, I was a big Boy Scout. Okay, but what we're looking at is a magazine intended for mass distribution among the field troops of my division that in fact is making the case strongly in several articles here that the people that we were dropped in amongst, who were getting, receiving a vast amount of unwarranted American firepower and were totally terrorized by us, that they were an honorable civilization and we were obligated to understand where they were coming from and to treat them with proper respect. But here is what, I don't want to get into it, but this guy's...
Hello, my name is Christoph Giebel. I'm a professor of international studies and Southeast Asian history at University.
This guy, Nick Terse, this interview, again, the whole shebang, it's an hour or something, is on the website. Terse is saying it was official American policy to commit absolute war crime, wall-to-wall war crime, murder, mayhem, destruction, cultural eradication of the Vietnamese, and that was American policy. And in fact, that was not American policy.
Okay, so you're speaking up, having seen that magazine also, you're saying that the attitudes were far more humane than post-war propaganda might lead us to believe.
Well, left post-war propaganda.
Left post-war, I think that's fine. Is that a picture of you, by the way, at the bottom of your page there?
Yeah, I don't know if that thing is going to open. This one, you mean? Let's see.
Is that you?
What you're looking at is 3 images here of material that was released last year, 2021, basically parroting the left anti-Vietnam war crimes. George Ho Chi Minh was the George Washington of the whole friggin' 9 yards of the anti-war movement from several different sources.
Right.
This is a KQED in San Francisco made a trailer for a video with Joan friggin' Baez and everything, and various American GIs tossing the bodies of innocent dead Vietnamese villagers onto the burial prop. Okay, so this is a left wing. Okay, the Monthly Review Press came out with a special issue on dissenting POWs. This is very far out also. Jane Fonda was not involved in this, but
I'm a big fan of hers.
This is very much her kind of thing. This is a video made by Monthly Review Press, just put online last year.
Is this the one you don't have the password for?
No, you don't
Okay,
need a
that's-
password. This is just
Okay,
a short piece of it.
trục trặc thì trục trặc cho luôn, chứ đừng như con thỏ đừng đâu truông, khi vui thì
You got volume?
Yeah, we do.
We were mostly
We don't have any
young.
interpretation.
There's not
no time to
experienced
watch
in
the whole thing
diplomacy,
now.
not aligned with the military in our own country.
Do you have volume from the video?
And we tried to figure out who we were in relationship to them and to the Vietnamese.
They were also paraded through the streets to humiliate them in the villages and the ruins of what the Americans bombed. But the Americans didn't really bomb anything in North Vietnam except Haiphong Harbor during the Christmas bombing of the North was not particularly, except for certain infrastructures like bridges, a target. Most of the damage in Vietnam was done in the South. Okay, let's.
I was going to bring up another topic that
Just
you,
keep
in
going
terms
for a
of
minute.
Vietnam, I wanted to mention your story that you've also spent a lot of time in, even if we don't have time to go into it. The McNamara's,
Morons.
yeah, well, that's the derogatory name for the program, but it was,
Yeah, but let's put that aside for a moment.
yeah,
There's a
okay,
whole
we
thing.
can.
When we go to my website again, you can go through the website and scroll down and watch an hour and a 45 minute. Okay, a right-wing filmmaker whose work I followed. He had a movie criticism blog with Roger L. Salmian for years. Lionel Chetwin. He made a film 20 years after that visit to the POW camp called the Hanoi Hilton, which was a term that the Monthly Review Press stayed far, far away from. That whole movie is on my website here if you want to see it.
So what would the memory hole caption be? It's like that prison was not a nice place the way they show it today. Is that
Right.
that would be right?
Okay, but this is a dramatization from Chetwin's film
What's this thing supposed to be?
of that same theme. Chetwin being, a right-wing Nazi. This is that same visit dramatized. And here comes the Jane Fonda's,
So this is a fictionalized version of what we just saw.
It's a fictionalized version from the right.
And it wasn't
Of the
Jane
thing-
Fonda the first time.
Jane Fonda, but it could have been.
It wasn't Jane
It was,
Fonda.
What on earth?
it was her mini-me.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear for the record that none
We're
of
here
this
to
is
try
about
and end the war.
Jane Fonda. Point.
We want you to try and set the record straight.
How?
Apologize
To who?
to the women and children you bombed.
Listen. The only thing that I hit was the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, I know that there are a lot of innocent
That
North
sounds like
Vietnamese.
you.
It's not
It sure
like
is.
me. It
That
doesn't
sounds
sound like
you.
me.
Just like she's Jane Fonda, that's you. That's interesting that you're both in this movie.
So,
So,
I'm
What
not
else do
intending-
you want to show as far as Vietnam? I don't want to cut you short, but I want to get to the temple restoration, which is in the aftermath of the war, right? It had to do
Yeah.
with,
But I'll show you one other thing.
okay, that's what I want you to do.
Okay, Vietnam America is a movie that can't be released because the copyright ownership is inaccessible by contact. So the executive producer of the movie can't show it to anybody because she doesn't have the release of the copyright.
So
This
what's
is
the-
based.
What's
This
the
movie is
title?
Vietnam America. It's all about essentially the remnant community of Vietnamese veterans in Southern California. And
So this
how
is
they're,
very hard to find, and if you do find it, you've got a treasure.
yeah, but in fact, if you contact me back channel, I'll give you the password into the full movie. But at any rate, I took
We
5
should
minutes.
get a distributor. I mean, they ought to be able.
Well, of
to
course they should, but they have to answer the email. The movie mostly is a 2-hour movie that mostly focuses on the search for his family members who died while boat people, along with him, he survived, that he was the only one of
The only one of
76.
72 people.
Okay, now he's a man in his late 70s who teaches Master Hua. He teaches martial arts to old people, to school kids in Texas. Here is a 1 minute and 45-second video. Watch this whole thing.
Master Hua does have quite a story. A few years after communists took over his country, he escaped by boat with 74 of his family and friends, including his wife and 2 children. His boat was pointed west toward the coast of Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. After spending more than 20 grueling days at sea and enduring multiple attacks by Thai pirates, he is the only survivor. At age 70, he hasn't forgotten.
This is my wife, Đức. This on a time we make
30
wedding
seconds
day.
left. Stick with it.
This is so beautiful. This is my daughter. She's the one I love it. This one, when we had a first baby, is my son. This is the picture of all my family. That's it. It's been 33 years, and I still have nightmares. I don't know where they buried the body, but I knew the body was found. I'm going back to find the graves of my wife and kids.
Passcode down below the link to the Zoom.
Okay, sorry about that, folks.
That's okay. Did we not have the audio?
No, we've had new people join, and I haven't muted everybody and so forth. Hi, Barry. Good to see you.
Okay, if you go in here, this is on the ebook. It'll tell you the password's required.
Right.
But I've already entered it here, so it'll run. If
Right.
anybody wants to see the whole movie.
The name of this episode is Excavating Orwellian Memory Holes. Some
Okay,
of them joined late, Alan, so I'm interrupting you to explain to them what we're looking at. Alan specializes in excavating things that people are deliberately trying to paint over, forget, or otherwise purge. And he's made it his life's mission to do some of that memory hole excavating. And that the irony of it is he's using technology, namely Flash PDFs, that Adobe is actively trying to discourage use of for the purposes that he's used it. In other words, they want to dumb it down way, way more than he has shown it can be used at a higher level, right? So I'd say when you were asked to convert it to PowerPoint, you were basically being asked to dumb it down into the format that your standard hotel conference person can deal with. They're not equipped to deal with all this PDF stuff. You represent a future that did not occur. Basically, that's kind of what a memory hole is. It's like, because when you remember a memory hole, it kind of changes the world you're in, doesn't it?
Yeah, also I should say that my technical training, I have a PhD from Berkeley in environmental planning, and I'm actually a reasonably serious and capable scientist of estuarine ecology and hydrology. But as
that was the other PDF. Maybe while you're talking, you could scroll to that.
Okay, I'm going to get in there
We're
now.
about halfway through the program, so I want to also give other people chances to talk before it's done. For those who joined us late, I plan to turn on the mics. In the meantime, they're muted so you can have background noise.
Okay, so here we are back again in my homepage. Is this up now? Right, okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little bit about what this project is all about.
Yeah.
You access this one. You notice I have 2 things called Excavating Orwellian Deconstructed, and then a larger project called just Excavating Orwellian, which is about a lot more things than Vietnam, but it's about memory holding stuff in the United States. But anyway, let's look at this thing. This is a typical ebook. Tell me if it comes up okay.
So far, so good.
Okay, good. This was a temple that was bombed by a pair of Air Force F-105s when it was occupied during the Vietnam War by North Vietnamese regulars coming across the Ho Chi Minh Trail into Laos illegally, because at that time Laos was a pro-Western kingdom. And when they occupied that temple compound, which was kind of a convenient and nice place, the local people knew the Americans were going to come bomb the shit out of it, so they all scattered. And it was hit by this pair of F-105s, each of which incidentally carried a larger bomb load. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just clicking. Every picture tells a story. I'm just clicking on additional in-depth visual content. The main target was the image hall where the primary Buddha image is, okay? And this is my unofficial bomb damage assessment, judging the size of the bombs. Again, F-105s, a single F-105 carried a bigger bomb load in terms of tonnage than a B-17 Flying Fortress of World War II. So they were able to bomb the shit out of a lot of things. However, the bomb that went right through the roof, cut a nice clean hole through the roof of the main image hall. These are filled bomb craters here and here, destroyed everything on the temple compound except the primary target. It was a dud, and it just sat there ticking away. And it wasn't, the monks all ran away and made a new temple about 5 or 8 kilometers away. And this place was never quite desanctified, but it was basically completely left untouched and unrestored. And my wife—
You have more pictures of that. I remember you showed me. You should go to those.
Yeah, well, I have lots of those. Okay.
Yeah, not just the craters. Let's see what it looks like.
Okay. Well, we had gotten word. Nobody knew about this place. And it was just as if it was kept in a tank of liquid nitrogen for 50 years. It was completely unarchived, unrestored, and what had been in the deepest jungles of Savannah Ket province. So somebody turned my wife onto it. You got to go there. You got to go there. And the next time I was in that area, I went there with an Australian cultural anthropologist and a Lao web designer, and we basically archived everything there and in high resolution in PDF. And that's what this archive looked like.
So you should explain in a couple of sentences, why was your wife notified about this temple? What was her job? To know about all temples in the world, or what?
She's a specialist in Southeast Asian. What's going on here? File may be too big. Let's not waste any time. Yeah,
there we go.
Okay, she's a professor of art history and the director of the Center for Burma Studies. We lived in Vientiane, Laos under the communists for about 6 or 7 years, from whatever, 94.
This is way after the war.
After the war, from 95 to 72. Right. And there's nothing like living in revolutionary Laos, Vietnam, and Cambodia, which we did.
Wait, what were the years again? From
Laos alone, 75 to 92.
75 to 92. Wow, that's a long time.
I'm sorry, 95 to 2002.
Oh, 95 to 2002. Got it.
Forgive me. Okay.
No problem.
But we also lived in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, after the war, doing postdoc research. Her in art history and me on the recovery, so far as there was any, from the Agent Orange damage in the delta below Saigon City.
I should butt in here. I'm going to butt in and just say Alan got married to this woman we're discussing in our living room, the Erner family. Remember at the beginning, I showed our family coat of arms. We were in Bhutan, as I mentioned, and Alan was a guest visiting the family, and he was in the company of this charming woman who he intended to marry, and they did so under Bhutanese law and ceremony, with some trepidation that this would not be accepted as holy matrimony in the West, where people are brainwashed in different traditions. But it was. They've never had a problem with acceptance. Am I right, Alan?
We got married twice, once by the local judge wearing a sword and a cape, and the second time, and not quite a kosher marriage ceremony, but we were already married, kind of Bhutan is a culture very much, it's a Vajrayana Buddhist culture, very much like Tibet, but for historical reasons, there was a big, what the equivalent of the Protestant Revolution in European history, where the Catholics who remained reactionary, that still held sway in Mongolia and Bhutan, but the Tibetan purified version of Vajrayana Buddhism became the dominant everywhere else. And the whole modern history of Bhutan was resisting the Protestants trying to beat down the Catholic style of Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah, some people will understand that analogy. It's called the red hats and the yellow hats is another way to talk.
Kirby, I didn't know Kirby. The invitation to get married in Bhutan came from Jack, who I had worked with pretty closely when I was a long-term consultant and graduates. I did my dissertation research in Bangladesh because Americans couldn't go back to Southeast Asia until 14 years after the war. It was impossible. And as far as I know, I was the first quote unquote American environmental scientist allowed to work more or less freely in Vietnam. It was quite spectacular.
You've worked in Burma and Thailand.
Yeah, both before and after. But the postdoc I did in Vietnam was in 1991, which was another far out thing.
So it's pretty trippy. You were both a student there, a PhD, and a warrior.
I would like to think of myself as a warrior when I did my PhD. But regarding scientists, I can't help think of that line in Ghostbusters where Bill Murray says, "Back off, I'm a scientist." And Sigourney Weaver said, "Scientist, you seem more like a game show host." Okay, enough of the. But anyway, look at the quality of this archive. All high res PDF. Nobody ever.
You have a 360 somewhere, I think. A 360.
Oh, I have. Yeah, I'll show you some of this stuff. Okay, unless you're hopeless reactionaries like me and Kirby, you can't run this anymore because Adobe convinced you to remove Adobe Flash Player or Flash Player Debugger from your hard drive, which they sniff around whenever you're online connected to them. And they very thoughtfully say, "Please, this can damage your blah, 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 blah. Please push this uninstall button." But if you don't, you still have it. Okay, here is that. This is a stitched cylindrical flash panorama. It's not a video. It's made up of 25 intricately stitched 300 individual still images.
We don't see it yet.
Oh, really?
We're just looking at you're going to have to switch screens. Remember how we practiced?
Yeah, hold on. Let me do that.
I want to mention while you're doing that another temple reconstruction PDF I've seen of yours involves deliberately rebuilding a dangerous structure. It wasn't bombed or anything, by scanning all the internal artwork in great detail, digitizing it, and then here's the genius part, projecting it back on the walls of the new interior after they build the new structure. Completely blank walls, just project in color the same pictures that had been there and paint over, right?
Well, if we have 5 minutes at the end, I can show you that.
Yeah, we're getting towards where we're going to have that. So, but show us I want to turn on the mics here in about 5 minutes in case people want to interact.
Okay, I'll go back to, but give me a second.
I am. And it'll be a quarter of, that's a good time. So right now it's 7:40. We're going to go till 8 o'clock. And so the last 15 minutes, I'm going to have mics on for people who want to talk to Alan about his experiences and his forays into technology. Like I remember you said you met with some Adobe people about this, tried to talk them into making more of you're trying to talk Adobe into doing more sales of their product than they want to do. You're like,
well, they had thought, they were very impressed when I showed them this stuff 20 years down the road. Look, give me a second. Let me go back into my homepage because I want to show you that other thing that Kirby brought up.
Yeah, the panorama shot. Those, you can do those now, but you've been doing them a long time. You're a pioneer. Like you're one of the first people to use imagery, digital cameras in the field to survey what would happen if a dam was built. Like these water wheels would disappear, these rice paddies would go away. So a bureaucrat trying to make the decision, they're not just reading boring text. They click and they see a movie of what's, it brings a whole new level to bureaucracy. Like those cubicle jobs where everything is dry text. You can't be as dry when Alan's style, and they hated it. They didn't want to really see this stuff. They just wanted to read their boring memos and stuff and approve the dam or whatever.
I'm trying to get into my main homepage again. Okay, here it is. The thing that Kirby
we
was
don't see it yet. There's a little delay. Hopefully you've chosen it through share screen.
Hold on.
Using Zoom.
This means I have to go back. None of us really have tremendous facility with Zoom yet.
Are you clicking the little bar that says, there we go. There we go.
Okay, so this is my home page once again. Cultivate understanding, all lowercase, no punctuations, oneword.com, and you'll get into it. And it'll run on any platform, any app, any operating system. Okay, the thing that Kirby was talking about was this project. If I can find it, give me a second here.
45 hours of material, all in danger of being memory hold.
Because this is interactive PDF, which nobody knows what to do with it. And
Right.
they don't realize that every one of these images opens up a complete interactive ebook with as much as in itself a couple of gigs of content, sometimes more.
I think one of the questions you're going to get, if I'm not mistaken, will be like, why? In other words, what is the advantage? And I'm going to give my answer, which is if you have one single document, and why it's called PDF, portable document format, but it has internal hyperlinks, internal movies, internal audio. Really what you have is a single file that's a website in a box, is how you could say it. You can just hand it to someone on a memory stick. But where this falls down is the corporate support. In other words, the very companies that brought us this technology are now very ambivalent about it, strangely enough, and are trying to pull it back and make it dumber. They don't want us to be as smart as we have become, I think is another theme of this video.
Okay, let me call up this thing. This may not be the best way to go into it, but
it might have to be your PowerPoint. I think there was some stuff that only survives.
Okay, now this wasn't in the, okay, this is a presentation I made on that temple. If I can figure out how to move this thing.
Okay, I think people who are new to Zoom, you can usually find a slider between the screen being shared and the heads. So if the heads are taking up too much room, look for a slider that you can slide left or right, and you're in control of your own view more than some people realize. And I'm hoping when I record all this, as I am, that what gets recorded is what I see, because I'm trying to make Alan's stuff look big. And hopefully I am in the director's chair here. I believe I am. Terry would know, but I'm trying to act. Okay, we got 2 more minutes till Mike's on time.
Okay, this is a whole ebook about the demolition of that temple, why they did it, what it looked like in the process of being demolished. Let me see if this comes up correctly. Again, these are really big files, and Kirby has a surprisingly, no, these are the old. I'd have to.
Those are great paintings, man. Go slowly, because this is our one chance to see. Well, we can come and look later, but it's pretty amazing stuff. This is a little temple painting, and they're showing the life of the entire.
It's illustrating. It's illustrating one particular story that's extremely widely known.
Oh, is this the Ramayana?
No, this is the Vasantara. Well, this is maybe, let me think about that for a moment.
It's an epic tale that most people know.
It is the Ramayana, but it's the Lao version of the Ramayana, which is considerably different from the.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. Okay. let me go back. I'm
I've
trying to
traveled
find
in these areas, so I'm very familiar with this architecture. It really brings it back.
Okay.
Very swoopy, very reptilian in a good way. The dragon motif, I would say, but not a nasty dragon. By the time you get to the west, dragons tend to be nastified, but out east, a dragon is a good thing.
But
More
at any
like-
rate,
yeah,
that building was stupidly demolished because the name of that temple was called Wat Upmong, and Upmong means grotto in Lao, and it was widely believed that there was a treasure grotto or a treasure cave underneath the old image hall.
so they were foolishly trying to find buried treasure.
Right, and the
And
way
they
that they were
destroyed the
going to
whole
get it.
temple for that.
Right. And years afterwards, I used to come around and curse them out for having done that. I said, your children will denounce you, your grandchildren will denounce you.
And yet you were the one who helped them do it.
Yeah, well, I didn't help them demolish it. I recorded it while it was
Yeah, you
being
made it
demolished.
okay. You made it okay. And then they
Well, that-
rebuilt it. I'm sure the new one's pretty good, right? So I'm gradually unmuting everybody.
Yeah, it's not as good as the old one, but
Actually, everyone, you guys, you're free to unmute yourselves. That's how it is. So I'm
Okay.
not going to go through and unmute everybody individually because sometimes it says I have to ask you to unmute. That's your problem. If you want to unmute, just do it. And feel free to jump in at some point. We're going to go until the top of the hour. So we have 15 more minutes. I wanted to make sure, since wanderers are used to talking, that we didn't just all have like a mask on or something.
okay, give me 1 minute to show you the demolition of the temple.
But you got all the time. You got all the 15 minutes. I'm just saying we'll have more voices chiming in probably. They're welcome to. And welcome to Wanderers. We haven't met on Zoom for a while, and this is one of our first officially recorded, public service YouTubes, memory holes, excavating Orwellian memory holes.
Okay, can you see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, look at this.
Now it went away, but here it comes again. There we go. VOM tractor pulled out. Oh, this is where they're going to pull it down. Not being bombed at all. Just pull it down. Looking for treasure. I see a giant tractor pulling. People are standing back. It's not a big temple, obviously.
No.
Not like St. Peter's Cathedral or anything. Here he goes. How you pull down a temple with a tractor. Didn't really get much of it. That was a lot of work for not very much. They have to do that over and over and over.
Okay, this was the dedication of the replacement structure, more or less on the same footprint.
Really looks a lot better.
It's not finished yet, but once they build this structure on the roof, symbolic of the holy Mount Marud, the abide of the god. It's that thing up here.
It's over
Then
3 years old. Do you think it's done by now? This video, I mean, is 3 years old. It's probably finished by now, right?
Oh, it's long been finished.
Yeah.
And here is what there's one more thing I'll show you from that. While the video camera was on the outside, running independently on a tripod, I was on the inside photographing the walls being pulled away. How
We
about
didn't
that?
see the panorama yet. Is that going to be able to show us
Which panorama?
the 360 spin around?
There isn't one from that episode. I didn't know how to make them, and I didn't have the app.
Oh, okay, sorry.
They were very nervous about me getting killed with the building collapsing on me.
I can imagine, yeah.
And I said, yeah, but what a way to die. Okay. Okay, let's go back a little bit here and I'll show you what the repainting trip was all about.
And if you want, at any point you have time, you can talk about your concerns about river systems, Salween, like
I don't know that we have
That's a whole nother talk, I realize, but another one of your foci, and this involves you traveling. The reason I bring it up is after the show, I'm going to show wanderers a link to that video I made about you in Burma and also about Sam Hill here on the Columbia. The link being Great Rivers of the World.
Actually, I think I do have a link. So this is the gizmo we invented.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, this guy who doesn't have email or Wi-Fi or anything he knew exactly what we wanted to do. And he figured out how to make, because we didn't have repeater cables, we had to have only 2 meters between the camera and so this is the first mock-up of the crane, the telescopic crane to be able to record the interior imagery. And this is the first time, this is the first time.
That's a good picture of it. The other picture too is good, yeah.
This was the first time we actually started using it.
Right. And now they're painting on the restored temple in that picture.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, your screen's gone for the moment.
Sure.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you, Len. You could join us after all.
Yeah.
And Jonathan's still hanging in there. Hey, Terry.
Oh, who knows what this is all about? Okay, I'm going to just open up my homepage if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. And I'll leave it at that. Do you have that yet?
Yeah, it just showed up.
Okay, good. Cultivateunderstanding.com. I'd say there's at least 4 terabytes of content of this type that you've seen, all in interactive PDF. Kirby overstated how much of the stuff is embedded in PDF. I found it preferable to have hot links in the PDF file to many different subdirectories with videos, with virtual reality panoramas, with slideshows, rather than try to make a giant, humongous single PDF where one screw up would build the whole thing, bring the whole thing down.
It's more like the PDF is the top layer, and then you have a file tree under it. That's
basically
fair.
Yes. And this is the
whole
home
be
page
on a memory stick. In other words, it's still convenient to share things as a tree.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll shut up, as hard as that will be, for a few minutes. And
it's
any
not like you have to shut up. It's just people can chime in with any kind of questions.
Okay. I am at your service.
If they have any. Yeah. I'll explain a little bit. I have a question on the chat window about how we plan to edit it. I'm not going to edit it a huge amount because people know that it's a spontaneous event and not scripted. And so we're not holding people to a high standard of like a prepared lecture that somebody actually has notes and stuff. And I hope, because we're called wanderers, that resonates. In other words, a wanderer is a kind of a rambler and also a flaneur. I like to use the French, which was a person who roamed around watching the effects of industrialization, for example, in Paris, drawing it discreetly in a sketchboard because they didn't have a camera yet, but just recording for posterity as an anonymous person the great changes that are underway. And here, I think excavating Orwellian memory holes is a perfect theme for wanderers, because we are the ones who are willing, on occasion anyway, to go down those rabbit holes and go with Alan deep into the memories of Vietnam, which he's still very much alive in Alan. And thanks to this technology, are still alive, at least sort of. And I think, like you say, Alan, our understanding of like all the Vietnamese refugees and stuff amongst us here in Portland, big deal. A lot of my early experience in Portland was working for a nonprofit, the focus of which was settling refugees here, most of them from Asia, because this was the aftermath of the war. This is still in the 80s that I came here, and there was still a lot of Laotians, Cambodians, all that. So we're very affected here by Vietnamese culture in a good way. Like, I'm so glad that I live in a country where all cultures come together. That whole melting pot thing, I'm a big fan of. I like Cape Town for that reason. I like cities that, anyway, it gets disturbing to some people though, because they feel like they're being invaded, right? They don't like foreigners and stuff like that.
In some cases that's well warranted. Do you have this thing that I'm going through now?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a supra version of Orwellian memory holes that addresses the Vietnam issue specifically, but it also addresses various memory holes created in specifically San Francisco and Madison, Wisconsin. And also the memory holing in Thailand of a lot of old and a very important imagery that is essentially contrary to monarchical self-importance. And a lot of this still imagery, as it was restored, has had the captions removed and left blank because they're threatening to the present monarchical
Scroll
regime.
up a second, if you would. That picture of the Indians or the pioneers marching over the Indian. Is this a school mural that was in some high school? Because I've spent some amount of time in your memory holes, and I'm trying to remember the story on this.
Yeah, that's a school. That's a mural in San Francisco that was going to be torn down and overpainted. There's a lot of stuff about that until they discovered that environmental law required a full environmental statement that would cost $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 to conduct. Whereas to just go in there with a pot of paint and a union laborer for a day or two to cover up all these murals.
Now, here's what I don't get. Please explain, what was the motive of people who wanted to cover it up? Because you're talking about left versus right. This looks like it's about the oppression of the Native Americans, and therefore, wouldn't they want to keep it?
No, because it was regarded as triggering to the remaining Native American community and too deeply offensive to the precious snowflakes who now attend the school. The majority of
so it's like a horror film that you're forced to look at. Just because you go to school, they force you to learn about all this horrific past that really is nothing you had anything to do with. I can see as a kid, you really resent adults always trying to shove their nightmares in your face.
Yeah. Well, a similar thing was happening in Madison, which is the Portland of the Midwest.
Yeah, I've heard that. And Austin is the Portland of Texas.
So this was the northernmost Confederate cemetery during the Civil War because the Confederate soldiers were treated very abusively who were imprisoned there. After a very heroic set of battle actions, I don't know if I can find the whole shebang, but.
And I would agree with you, by the way, as we come to a semi-close, that McNamara's morons, as they're called, that whole program to take low IQ kids and send them off to Vietnam as cannon fodder, that's a memory hole that people kind of want to forget, that Americans can be so cruel to their own people, really send them to slaughter. I mean, it makes you think communists are fond-hearted compared to McNamara, right?
Well, just to be clear about that, 5 million people. What happened was that McNamara convinced Johnson that they needed another 300,000 infantry troops or troops in general in Vietnam because we were taking such losses, particularly 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, that by lowering the intelligence quotient required being inducted into the military, they could pick up another 300,000 troops without the politically dangerous thing of mobilizing the National Guard or federalizing the National Guard or calling out the Army Reserve. But contrary to what Kirby said, there's a whole ebook. It's unedited and it's being expanded. It's in the website. You can find it, called something about McNamara's memory hole.
I think it's a fascinating story. I would not presume to know more about it than anyone because it's not been a focus, but thanks to you, I've learned a ton about it.
Well, so I believe that was the cause of a plane crash in which my genuine spiritual advisor was killed because some asshole put jet fuel in the plane's tanks instead of aviation gas. And I assumed anybody that...
And it was clearly labeled. It was clearly
labeled.
Mistake.
Must have been a moron. No, it happens all the time, but that's another story. At any rate, the whole McNamara's moron thing, which had a reputation, these guys are idiots. They caused much more damage. Their lives were terrible. Their post-military lives were a wreck. They died at a much higher rate. That was subjected to rather austere empirical examination by a very honorable and respectable social scientist who's specialist or educational scientist, who is a specialist in adult education. And he came up with the conclusion that the morons really didn't do any better or any worse than the regular troops who went to Vietnam. But keep in mind that the bourgeoisie managed to have one, unless they were stupid enough to try calling up this cutie who was at the colonel's daughter at her house, usually figured out some racket.
Right. That ties it all together. That shows you're a moron. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, so I'll shut up, as hard as it is to do.
No, that was really, really excellent. I really thank you for sharing your time. And I'm glad you could come to the Erner House and do a Wanderers taped presentation. So guys, look for this on YouTube. I'm not going to do a lot of heavy editing. I think we could have had more participation, but just your being here was helpful. It created witnesses. And Alan will go down in history now as I think it was pretty concise. I don't know. I'm going to turn off recording, but we can still talk.